Hello and welcome to Dialogue. China has delimited and announced the baselines of the territorial sea adjacent to Ying in the South China Sea, a move that followed the Philippines' new laws defining its own marine boundaries and international sea rules in the area. What brought about the announcement? How does China mark the baseline of its islands in the South China Sea? And how may these Philippine laws impact the situation in these waters? Join us for discussion today, live from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today are Rong Ying, Chair Professor at Sichuan University and Senior Research Fellow from China Institute of International Studies, Professor Anna Rosario Malindog-Uy, a Director and the Vice President for External Affairs of the Asian Century Philippines Strategic Studies Institute. And later on, we'll also be joined by Yang Li, Executive Director of the Institute for China-Europe Studies. Welcome to Dialogue. So, Rong Ying, I will start with you. The Chinese side made the announcement about the delimiting of this Ying Island in the South China Sea. So, tell us why, how you explain. Could you explain what exactly this means?
Well, I think the statement by the Chinese Foreign Ministry made it very clear that, according to Chinese viewpoint, Ying has been the integral part of China, and China has solid historical and legal ground. And in accordance with the international law, including UNCLOS, which I think the principle of domination or the land dominates the sea decides, and also according to China's relevant law, the territorial, seas related to that. I think it is only appropriate and then it's a normal practice for China to make the announcement to define clearly its territorial seas related to Ying. And I think it conforms certainly the international practice, and also I think has legitimate and reasonable and justified. And of course, a lot of analysis has been going on, the context, the backdrop of this announcement. But I think that while I would like to make very clear and also echo by echoing the Foreign Minister's statement that it is a normal practice, I think to some extent it is, personally, I believe, related to the recent moves by the Philippine side in terms of the enactment of the two acts, the Maritime Zone Acts and also the Maritime Sea Lane Acts, which I think China believe, and China has launched a strong opposition and protest against that. But I think China, the way the Chinese responded is still very much restrained, and I think it also sent a very strong signal on the one hand that it would like to continue to safeguard, certainly, territorial integrity and maritime rights. But in the meantime, it is also ready to work with the Philippines for a proper settlement of that. Last but not least, I think it also sent a very strong signal that because with the clear, defined territory related to territorial claim to Ying, Chinese relevant authorities or institutions will be able to better implement or enforce related, laws related to not only in terms of sovereignty, but also equally important is like the protection of the environment, ecological systems around that. So this is a normal practice, and this is also, I think, meant to send a strong signal to the Philippine side and international community as a whole. China is wanted to safeguard its interest, territorial integrity, but in the meantime, it is ready to work to seek a proper management, settlement of these disputes.
Well, Anna, how do you make the statement, by the Chinese Foreign Ministry Of course, the announcement came 2 days after the Philippine side enacting the two laws. Domestic law, of course, is related to these disputes there.
Thus far, I mean, with the pronouncement of the Foreign Ministry of China, and also, of course, it has a strong opposition to the new enacted laws signed by President Marcos Jr. recently. I think it's understandable as far as I'm concerned, precisely because it is a known fact that China has an sovereignty claims over some of the parts by which we in the Philippines are also claiming. So in a way, I expect China to have that strong opposition, and of course, it will be vocal about it. But on the other hand, the Philippine government under Marcos Jr. is standing on its, of course, on saying that it's but legal for the Philippine, domestically speaking, to come up with a law with these laws, precisely because on the pretext that it is a sovereign state. But at the end of the day, it's still a dispute, because there's an overlapping claim between the two sides, and I think this is not only an issue between China and the Philippines, because I would presume that a country like Vietnam, that has an overlapping claim with the Philippine claims, and even that of China's claim, will possibly react on the recent enacted laws made by the Philippines.
So Anna, tell us more about this enaction of these two laws, maritime zone and also this international sea lane rules. What does that exactly mean with, what's the relation? Some people say it's, related to the disputes. Somehow it's using domestic law basically to legalize the claim. Is that the sense here?
Well, let me explain a little bit about the two laws, and then I will go on with how I perceive it and what is the implication of that with regard to China and vis-a-vis the other claimant states. The Philippine Congress recently passed two maritime laws, the Philippine Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act and the Philippine Maritime Zones Act, which President Marcos signed into law. If you really look at the Philippine Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act, basically it designates specific routes within the Philippine archipelago for foreign vessels like commercial and military ships without prior clearance. This law reinforces what you call Philippine sovereignty over its waters, while of course, they are saying that it's upholding international navigation rights. But of course, China is reacting to this precisely because it has an overlap with the areas that China claims under the so-called non-dash line or the 10-dash line. On the other hand, if you look at the Maritime Zones Act, it is a law that formally delineates the Philippine maritime zones, including its territorial sea, exclusive economic zone, and continental shelf. It reinforces the Philippine sovereign rights over these zones per se, as per UNCLOS, particularly regarding the right to explore, exploit, and conserve and manage marine resources within the EEZ, or the exclusive economic zone. So in a way, the Philippines, by enacting this law, is trying to solidify its claim in the face of competing claims in the South China Sea vis-a-vis China and other claimant states, Southeast Asian claimant states. But of course, I understand that China opposes the law as it considers this maritime zone to be a violation of its claim. And of course, the claim of China, as we know, is historical rights and in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. Now, the question here is how this impacts internationally. One thing that we have to understand, as far as regional countries are concerned, so far I have not heard anything favoring us. But on the other hand, the United States and its Western allies are supporting these laws thus far. Now, the question is if there would be changes on the ground. So far, none. I don't see that there will be a change on the ground situation. And the challenge of these laws, though this is domestic, is how to enforce it given the overlapping claims with China and even with Vietnam. So this is basically the situation vis-a-vis the two newly enacted laws by the Philippines.
Rong Ying, of course, if you look at the moves by Manila, I mean, if other countries follow Manila's example, I mean, every country in disputes with these territories, they can use, say, domestic law to legalize their claim. Of course, overlapping claim there. That's why, in the first place, we have trouble there. And then, are we somehow, deepening these problems instead of simplifying, instead of making it easy to be resolved?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think the statement of Foreign Ministry of China made it very clear. And first and foremost, I think the Philippines territory has been historically decided by the international treaty, like the Treaty of Paris, and the law, the Maritime Sea Law, Act, includes Huangyandao and quite a lot of Nansha Island. That is something I think China made very clear. It's a serious violation, infringement of China's territory. Secondly, I think China also made it very clear the purpose of enactment of these two acts, in particular, I think the Maritime Act, is meant to so-called implement the 2016 arbitral award or ruling, which I think China has made very clear at the very beginning it's not going to accept, it's not going to participate, it's illegal, and for the purpose of course, according to the Philippine side, of implementing UNCLOS, UN related,
and also along
related.
The sea, right? Yeah,
that's right. So this is something I think legally not does not hold water. But related to your question is it also goes or against or in violation of the declaration of the conduct of the parties in the South China Sea, the DOC, which stipulate clearly that no country that should expand or complicate the disputes. And this is very much important. I think it has played a very important role in helping the region, the claimant states, and the region as a whole to work together to achieve a proper management and settlement issues. So I think all in all, China made it very clear the statement, and also, if I can say, the countermeasures related to that is meant to ensure these principles, these laws will not be violated, because in the end, neither side is going to benefit. We're going to see more tensions, more problems, and neither side is going to benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. So, Anna, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. With regards to the impact and how it impacts the region and even my country and the relationship between China and the Philippines, thus far I see that this is an added complexity to the already challenged bilateral political and diplomatic relation between China and the Philippines. Personally, really, if I would be asked about solution to the dispute in the South China Sea, I don't think legalistic solution and strategy would work, because at the end of the day, even if you have these laws, the problem there is enforcement. For me, the way I see it, if you really want to settle the South China Sea dispute, that it would be peaceful and more stable and secure, not only between the Philippines and China, but the whole region, basically, is to really focus on low politics and not high politics, because this is high politics dynamics. Low politics is more about trying to have that possible joint cooperation, may it be in oil and gas exploration and ventures, joint fishery management, joint scientific marine exploration in the South China Sea, that all claimant states is China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and even Brunei and Taiwan would benefit tangibly. And you would reduce the tension, because having this kind of situation at the moment, you can see there's really an escalation of tension between the two countries, politically speaking and diplomatically speaking. And I don't think it would resolve anything at all. So that's my personal position and perspective on this issue.
Well, Yang Li, welcome to the show. So we were discussing the recent two laws by Manila. How will these laws somehow may escalate or complicate the situation there? Because you can say all the claimants, they can say using domestic laws to enhance, to strengthen their claim, to legalize their claim, and then there's no solution because everybody can say we are following our own laws. So there's no way to resolve that kind of disputes in a peaceful manner. What do you make of it?
Okay, thank you. Actually, in my view, every claimant in the South China Sea, they have their own claims and they have their own positions. So what we need is actually some constructive and creative diplomacy to bridge their differences, and maybe the differences are not so easy to resolve, but they still can find ways to manage the disputes. So it means that maybe by just like practical provisional arrangements or other ways of exercising self-restraint, so as to create a conducive environment for the claimants to finally find solutions acceptable to all the parties.
Well, Yang Li, obviously, China is not actually following the let's say the practice of the Manila, to enact a domestic law to legalize or to enhance its claim of the islands in disputes over there. China is basically reaffirming its baselines to make it more accurate, clearer about the claim there. So can we say, you mentioned restraint. I'm thinking the Chinese side is actually exercising a certain degree of restraint in terms of how to solve this problem.
I think by responding to Philippine domestic legislation, I think China is exercising self-restraint because China only expressed its opposition to the Philippine legislation, and also China has its own way of reacting to this situation by announcing the Huangyandao baselines. But I think for both sides, they still have political will to manage the situation, so that I'm relatively optimistic about the future prospect. That I think the China and Philippines will sit down and talk between themselves. And the bilateral channels and communication mechanisms are still in place. As long as they have political wills to make full use of that, I think that those mechanisms can play a very constructive role in managing the disputes. But however, I think China also sent a very strong signal by announcing these countermeasures, is that for any perceived provocations, there will be consequences. So I think this is kind of a two-pronged approach.
Two-pronged approach. Rong Ying, Yang Li is a bit optimistic. We still have room to talk and to solve this problem peacefully. But I have doubts about that, simply because, if the other side has made it into law as part of their territory, how can you talk with the other party about, solving this territorial disputes issue? Because for me, it seems like it's already non-negotiable. It's a part of Philippines, they say. And any government, if they agree to somehow a compromise, or concession even made by both sides, they can be, accused of betraying or violating their national law.
Well, yeah, that's certainly very much concerned. Not only, I think, to China, one of the claimant state to the South China Sea issue dispute, and also I think to the countries, the region. Before I go straight to your questions, I think answer. Because I think I would like to correct mistake. I think Taiwan is part of China, so from Chinese official positions, it's never been the part of this dispute. Coming back to your question, I think the Chinese position has been over the past decade since the agreement, signing of DOC, has been very clear. It's kind of advocate a dual track strategy or approach. that direct talks or negotiations between direct parties of claimant states, parties. In the meantime, working together with the country of the region as a whole, ASEAN, for building the South China Sea into a sea of friendship, cooperation, and peace. And in the meantime, I think DOC has to be effectively implemented. In the process, I think the COC, the Code of Conduct of South China Sea, should be sort of negotiated. And that's been going on for several rounds, and substantial progress have been made. Of course, difficult challenges remains. So this is the idea. This is the approach, and the moves by the Philippine side, particularly regarding in the legal aspect, does very much complicate this process, and as our Philippine colleagues has mentioned. So it is unnecessary, it is provocative, and make this question very complicated, and does not serve the interest of certainly the I side at all, but also cause many problems and undermine the efforts. You cannot unilaterally implement or enact a domestic law, to manage or to that and disputes, regional disputes or disputes at the regional and international implications. It's not a responsible way. It's not, a way that would help address and manage the situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, Anna, I want to raise this recent development between China and Indonesia. In the similar situation, they have overlapping claims, and they have agreed to set up this intergovernment joint steering committee to explore and advance relevant cooperation. Obviously, there are pledges to remain peaceful and to deal with the issue with bilateral, consent and support. So, how do you see such a way of, handling bilateral disputes, which is very different, say, between the disputes, from the disputes between China and Manila here?
Okay, thank you for that question. But before I answer your question directly, I would just like to address our Chinese colleague here. I'm very much aware that Taiwan is part of China because of the One China policy, and I think my country, the Philippines, adhere to that. What I'm just saying earlier is the island of Taiwan is also, to a certain extent, but of course it's part of China, has claim over the South China Sea. On the other hand, with regards to what you're saying, like Indonesia and China came up with that kind of bilateral structure by which it can possibly work together, especially I've read recently that there is such a thing as an kind of joint oil and gas exploration that in between Indonesia and China, which is a very, very pragmatic and a very a progressive approach to both countries. I think on the part of the Philippines, it happened before during the presidency of Duterte, and I think there was initiative. There was even an MOU, a mutual written understanding that the China and the Philippines would have a joint oil gas exploration in some parts of the South China Sea. There was an even MOU, a mutual understanding when it talks about fishery management in the South China Sea and many other arrangement that would help not only mitigate the tension, but actually would forge more cooperation between the two countries. Given this, that it happened before during the Duterte time, I think it's not impossible. It's really the political will of the leadership of the two countries, and it's really about thinking not just of your country, but the whole regional situation. Because if there will be tension between the two countries like the Philippines and China over legal matters and over even skirmishes in the South China Sea, it affects the whole region. As far as I'm concerned, the solution to the South China Sea really is trying to push for the code of conduct, uphold the DOC of 2002, and at the same time strengthen the BCM of the bilateral consultative mechanism. It's very much needed now, given the tension, given all of this that is given all of these developments, and I hope really that the two countries would sit down and talk and discuss how they're gonna move forward, and they should at least have a common ground. It's very important for the Philippines and China to find a common ground.
Yes.
And it's very important for the two countries to sit down and talk, because if you don't talk, you just push your agenda. It does not affect the two countries. It affects the whole region. And I think that is what is very important at the moment, to preserve the peace, stability, and security of the region, not just of the two countries, because everyone is affected if these two countries will not have good relations.
Well, that is true. It's affecting the peace and stability of the whole region. So Yang Li here, of course, if you look at the situation, like Indonesia and the Philippines, the difference is, of course, you have the U.S. siding with the Philippines, U.S. supporting Manila, basically to challenge China. Of course, we have seen tensions increasing since the latter half of last year. And Indonesia, let's say, independent country here, dealing with China, handling the relationship between the two countries. So how meaningful is the latest, let's say, example agreement between China and Indonesia to not bearing the disputes, but handling their disputes in a very, let's say, peaceful way, and focusing on their joint efforts to develop their own economy, their society here?
Thank you. Actually, I just want to echo what Anna just expressed. I think this cooperation, maritime cooperation, oil and gas, is a real good example for the claimant countries to address their differences and disputes in the South China Sea. I think China and Indonesia, their agreement on this kind of cooperation on maritime joint development is the latest example of, I can say it's a very major positive breakthrough for the two countries to manage the situation in the South China Sea. Although the details of the arrangement is not publicized, but as I read from the joint statement by the two countries, I think the statement was very carefully drafted so as to accommodate the concerns of both sides, and also not to prejudice against the position of either side. So I think this is a very good starting point for these countries to push forward this cooperation. And also, I think China and the Philippines, actually, these two countries took the need of jointly developing or exploring the oil and gas resources in the South China Sea. Back in 2005, the oil companies of China and the Philippines, together with that of the Vietnam, they carried out a tripartite joint seismic undertakings from 2005 to 2008, and also the 2018 MOU, also mentioned by Anna, which set a very good example for the regional countries to address the disputes. I think, but those documents are still there. So I think China and the Philippines are in a position to pick them up again and talk seriously about how to proceed. I think that is the right direction for addressing the South China Sea issues, as I said, by creative and constructive diplomacy.
Diplomacy, and also be innovative in how to solve this problem, but working together in a joint way for the benefits of everybody here. Well, with that, we come to the end for today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app on YouTube. Thank you for being with us. I'm Xu Qinduo. See you next time.